In a business sometimes populated with types, Lambros Devos is one of a kind. I'm Mike Ulmer. This is Catapult Content with Lambros' story, the story of a different kind of real estate professional. Tell me, where are you from?
I'm Toronto, born and raised, mostly in the East End, but we moved around a lot as a youngster. I lived in Scarborough, East York, North York, eventually made my way out to Brampton and Mississauga area, where I started working. And actually, before I even got into real estate, I was in healthcare. I have a kinesiology degree from York University. And I was a personal trainer. I was a massage therapist for a while. But at some point, I felt burnt out, right? So I just felt I had to do something else. And real estate was a natural option for me. My mother was in real estate. I've always been, drawn to real estate in a way. So that's why I eventually made my way there and found an office in Mississauga, which is great. And here I am now.
What you say? When was it real estate? What did your dad do?
My dad. My parents were divorced when I was about 10 years old.
Yeah.
Actually, before my mom was in real estate, she had her own Greek schools. My background is Greek.
Yeah.
And she was actually a popular community figure. And she ran her own education program in Greek schools. My dad was working for her at the time, and then they split. They went their separate ways, obviously. Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't keep in contact much with my father.
Yeah.
My mom remarried to a great guy, but unfortunately, he passed away very quickly, like about 5 years later when I was about 16. And so then, it was pretty much my mom the whole time. Raising 3 kids, right? Myself and my older sister and a younger sister. What's that?
Sorry, excuse me. When did she go into real estate? Forgive me.
Late 80s. So it was about 87, 88, something like that.
So were you still at home then?
I was still at home at that time. Yeah, I was still actually, and that's I was old enough to actually, pick up on what she was doing. So, and then I was helping her with dealing with tenants, property, looking at properties, etc. So I was kind of her little gopher, I guess.
So not at all. So let me ask you: when all this tumult was happening in your life and your mom's life, were you living in one home, or did you guys move?
We were living in one home at the time. I eventually moved out it was 1990, I believe, or 91, something like that, when I first moved out. My older sister moved out as well at the same time. But my mom we had a younger sister as well from the second marriage, right? So she was much younger than myself or my older sister. And so she was staying with my mom the whole time. She never moved out.
How important was that home to you with all that stuff going on in your life? How important? What was the address of that home?
Yeah, well, we moved around a lot. We were in Scarborough and on Catalina. We moved to Halsey Avenue in East York, then to Pharmacy Avenue, etc. So we were on a few.
Oh, I see. But there wasn't just so you guys had lots of addresses, not just the one.
That's right. Yeah. We moved around a lot, right? Before my parents were split, we were on Oakdean Crescent in East York. That's near Greektown. So I grew up near Greektown. Yeah. Yeah. And then we moved out to Scarborough and, back and forth.
But after your mom split, so I'm niggling on this. After your mom split and after your stepdad died, did you guys stay in one home or did you move around after that point?
No, we moved around after that as well. Yeah. So that was the Catalina house. And then he passed away. We moved to Halsey, I believe. Yeah. And then Pharmacy. And then after that, I moved out as well.
Why did you guys move around so much?
Well, I mean, I guess it was the situation, right? Yeah. There was a lot for my mom to handle with the passing of her husband, right? So I think we had to sell the house and move to something smaller. It was a 5-bedroom home, right? And I guess we couldn't handle it. So I think that's pretty much the reason why we moved. Yeah.
And so you would sort of, because a lot of times people sell their homes for financial reasons, but a lot of times people sell their homes for life reasons.
Correct. It was more life reasons, 100%.
For sure. Yeah. And very profound life reasons. So how did that experience of you as a young man, having to change homes for life reasons, very powerful life reasons, give you an empathy towards people who also have to leave home for life reasons, change their homes for life reasons?
Wow, that's a great question. I think I do empathize with people. I think it allowed me to mature very quickly because it wasn't only the moving around, it was the fact that I was 16 years old. Yeah. We had a baby in the family. Yeah. My mother was a single parent now all of a sudden, and with 2 teenagers and a baby, right? So I had to pull my own weight. I had to work, bring in some money, help raise the baby. As she grew up, I was taking her everywhere, to swimming lessons, to gymnastics, to soccer, to all these places, right? So I was kind of a stand-in father figure to her. Yeah. And it allowed us to bond. So, on the one hand, yes, of course, it's very sad. And I wish my stepfather was still here today. Yeah. But on the only silver lining is that it allowed me and my little sister to bond. Yeah.
And the power of place, eh? The power of home and looking for the right place, which is what you guys did. And you went to probably 4 homes in about 5 or 6 years. And the power. So were there people in that time in your life that was very tumultuous? Were there people in terms of the people who helped you find places to live that really influenced you, that really impressed you?
You know what? I wasn't really dealing with
your mom
the realtors at that point. It was all my mom, I think. Sure. I was just a kid. Yeah. Sure. I didn't really care. I did go look at the houses and I gave my opinion. Whether she listened to me or not, I don't remember. But I just went along with wherever she went, and I saw the struggles that my mom was going through, so I had to do whatever I could to help. Yeah.
I think that story, the fact that your mom is in real estate and the fact that this happened to you at such a pivotal point in your life, that's really interesting to me, Lambros, and that you must have taken away, like there's a reason why you decided you want to get into real estate after you didn't, like, yeah. How did you get it? Forgive me. All these things are very end around, and I appreciate it.
That's okay. It's okay. It's all good. It's all good.
So at first, was it sports is what drew you to athletic therapy? Was it love of sports, that sort of thing?
Yeah, you can say that. I actually, speaking of soccer, a minute ago I said I was taking my little sister to soccer. She ended up playing on a house league team, and about a month into the season, her coach quit. Yeah. And because I was always there, I was taking her to practices. The other coaches and the other parents saw me there, and they said, "Hey, do you want to coach the team?" And I'm like, I've never coached anybody. I don't know what to do. I'm a hockey guy. I don't know anything about soccer, right? But because I was into sports and hockey, etc., I kind of used the Pat Burns system at the time. 5 men up, 5 men back. So I said, okay, let's go 11 men up, 11 men back. Yeah. And this is what we're going to do. Everybody stick together. And it worked. It worked. We went from a last place team in house league. We won the championship. It was great, and I got hooked on coaching at that point. Yeah. Right. And next thing you know, I continued to coach Valerie, my little sister. Even after she stopped playing, I continued to coach, and I went into the rep side. My team went to the provincial level of soccer, and it was just one thing after another. And because I was so much into coaching, I said I want to do something connected to coaching, connected to athletics, right? So I said, hey, there's a kinesiology program. At that time, it wasn't called kinesiology. I think it was called sports something. I can't remember what it was called. Sure. But I said, hey, you know what, I'll go into that. I wanted to go back to university at some point. I had dropped out of university early on to help my mom, et cetera. Sure. But I said, this is the opportune time for me to get back into it. And I love sports. This is what I want to do. And boom, I graduated in less than 3 years. And, got into the personal training, et cetera.
Yeah. And you how long did you do that for?
I did that for a couple of years. Then I went into massage therapy. Yeah. Lasted there for about, I think, 7 or 8 years doing that. And I started teaching again. I think teaching's in my blood as well, because my mom was a teacher. I mentioned that. My dad was a teacher. My older sister was teaching. So I wanted to teach as well. So I said, massage is great, but I also want to share knowledge. I want to teach. That's what I'm all about. So I started teaching at the school where I graduated from, and several other massage schools in town as well.
So your whole life has been sort of taking care of everybody else.
You could say that as well. And I have the same philosophy now in real estate, right? I really like to take care of my clients. I love to educate them. And that's why I put on a live show as well. I post a lot of educational stuff on my social media. So that's what I'm all about. I'm all about educating, I'm about empowering, I'm about going the extra mile and taking care of my clients with whatever they need.
It's funny. I once met a guy. His mother was a teacher. His father was a butcher, and he became a journalist. And I said, "That's okay, because you butcher the language every day." I said, sometimes you meet people, and it just makes perfect sense as to how they became who they are.
Yeah.
And you're such an example of that. Your mom was a teacher and in real estate. You were a coach and in real estate. Yeah. And so, what are the qualities? Forgive me, I haven't asked you your mom's name.
Angela.
What are the qualities that Angela, the real estate person, gave to her son Lambros, the real estate person?
Wow, that's a great question. I think number one thing is hard work.
Yeah.
Right. I saw how hard she was working.
Yeah.
And how, like even from when she was studying to get into to get her license, right? Back then there was no internet, so they had these big thick books she was reading, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe she got through this so quickly. And then I noticed how hard she was working. Right, she was out all the time, working at the office or what have you, and working on deals, working with clients. And the second thing I would say is negotiation. My mom is like the toughest negotiator ever, right? So that I think I got from her as well, and I saw how she would deal with the negotiation side of the business, and I hope that I picked up some of that as well.
Did people underestimate her?
They do 100%. They underestimate her, especially now that she's a senior. Sometimes they think, oh, she's senior, I can take advantage of her. But no, they have another thing coming.
Lambros, that sounds like my mom. There's a graveyard full of people that misunderstood this little old lady as someone they could step over to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the business now is so different than it was before, and so volatile. Is everything changed, or there are some elements that stood your mom in good stead that still stand you in good stead?
Well, like I said, the fundamentals, right? The hard work. I mean, real estate, people getting into real estate, if they're naive, they think, oh, it's a great way to make money. I'll have all this free time. But the opposite is true, because you really have to work hard, and you're working sometimes, long days and weekends and evenings and what have you. And if you don't fight for clients, the biggest thing is getting clients. Where are they going to come from? People think, oh, I'll get my license and then I'll just sell a few houses. But
how tough can that be?
Exactly. How tough can that be? But you have to find the clients. That's the toughest part, right? So, and that's where the daily grind is. You have to, make phone calls, knock on doors, do whatever you have to do to get clients. Yeah.
Is there such a thing as and you often hear people selling systems and that there are also all sorts of glitchy titles, but is there really any easy way to this?
If there was, I don't know about it, or if there is, I don't know about it for sure. I think all the top producers worked hard. The ones that I've met and spoken to and have seen featured in different places, it all comes down to hard work, right? And it's like success doesn't come overnight, right? Like Michael Jordan said, he had to fail several times before he made that free shot, etc. But nobody sees those failures. They only see the achievements and the wins. Right?
So I guess the question is, because I'm sure there's a lot of remarkable people selling real estate, but it's a very dollar-driven industry. It's a very competitive industry. Mm-hmm. So how do you retain that balance between being competitive and aggressive for your client and still being an honorable business person?
Well, yeah, that's the number one thing as well. Integrity is at the top of my list, right? And that's what I was looking for when I joined an office. They had the same values as I did, right? Including integrity and taking care of the client.
And Lambros, tell me what, if you can, walk me through the relationship with a buyer through into the because it's really, they say cops see people at their very worst. I'm not sure real estate people aren't second. They see people under enormous stress and not at their best. No. So how do you do that? How do you make sure that not only is, because it's going to be a little traumatic and dramatic, and it is because it's big money.
Absolutely.
But how do you get people through that sane and as well as financially?
Well, I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but prior to me, I said I was in university the first time around. I dropped out. Yeah, I was actually taking psychology.
That's what I figured.
Right. Yeah. So I did about a couple of years of that, and then I dropped out. So I'm not saying that I'm using those psychological, learnings. Yeah. But I've always had an empathy towards people, whether it's natural, whether it was, came later. I'm not sure, but because of the coaching as well, I think I learned how to deal with people there, how to communicate effectively, how to, empathize, et cetera. So I think that's what buyers and clients see with me. And they said, okay, I trust this guy. I like this guy. I want to work with him. And sometimes they open up to me about certain things, right? Sure. So I have to deal with that. And and it's all about, I did actually take a lesson in effective communication as well. Yeah. So, and that's critical. That's so underestimated in today's world, how to communicate with people. It sounds very basic and simple that everybody should know how to communicate, but it's not true.
Do you get repeat business more because you got people with the dollar they wanted, or more because you navigated them emotionally through the experience?
I think the latter. It's all about relationships. So for me, a client is for life. At least I hope they are. If they want to walk away after the transaction, that's fine. Yeah. But I don't look at a client as a one deal, one-off. To me, it's about building relationships, because that deal may not transpire. For things happen in real estate, right? Yeah. It comes off the market, life changes, whatever. They can't buy anymore. And I've had that happen a number of times where I've gone out and looked for months with a client, and all of a sudden they said, oh, we're not going to buy. We can't buy anymore, or whatever. I still have those clients in my database. I still reach out to them. I still talk to them. And sellers as well. I've had, sellers come back to me after years out of nowhere. Just say, hey, you know what? You sold our house back then, or you never worked with us before, but we met you at an open house 5 years ago, and we liked you at that point, so we want you to sell our house, kind of thing. So it's like, it's great, sure, yeah. So it's all about building relationships. To me, that's number one, building relationships, and then trust, right? Because nobody's going to work with you if they don't trust you, right? And then it grows from there.
Lambros is for life.
That's right. Hey, I like that.
You get a friend for life, and I love. Well, I inherently believe that. Listen, let's talk about the industry for a second, can we? Yeah. There's a lot of inroads made in purple bricks and self commissioning and discounted commissioning and all those things. And I get why the industry the real estate industry would say, well, that's not necessarily the way to go. But what's the straight goods? What's the real advantages of a real estate agent?
Wow. Again, that's a great question. There's so many advantages. I think even I would underestimate the value of a real estate agent, right? Because sometimes people need to be walked through the process. Yeah. If they're an experienced buyer or seller, it's a little different. Maybe they can sell on their own, but just like navigating this market, at the rate things sell these days is just crazy, right? So, I have people emailing me about a property, and I said, oh, sorry, it's already sold. And they said, well, it just went up, but that's the speed. Sometimes back in March of this year, first 3 months of this year, things were selling in hours, never mind days, right? Wow. So things were selling so quickly. A listing would go up, by the end of the day, it was gone, it was sold. So you need somebody who's on top of things. You need somebody who's going to be able to ask the right questions, what to look for in a property, and with things selling so quickly, it did not allow time for home inspections, right? So, and I'm blessed that I've been through enough renovations and inspections in my life that I know what to look for. I'm not saying that I'm an experienced home inspector or anything, not at all. It's just that the obvious things I can point out to, especially to a first-time home buyer, and said, you may want to avoid this house because of this and that.